Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of Off the Cuff. I'm trying to get back into the flow of things, starting up this whole weekly episode thing again, and it's proving to be pretty difficult to find something to talk about. I say find something to talk about. I have to try and learn to note down what it is that catches my attention, what it is I'm thinking about in the week. So like the first two episodes, it was quite easy because there was a lot I had in my mind that I hadn't yet spoken about. Now I've kind of spoken about most of the stuff that's in my mind, and I'll notice a story or something going on, and I'll decide to talk about that. But often I won't remember. I'll watch some political video, watch Sargon or Stefan Molyneux talk about something, and I'll have a thought, but I won't note it down, and I won't remember to share my thoughts on it. Anyway, so if you're new to this series, as per usual, I don't really plan much of what I'm talking about, except for I try and write down things that come to mind, and then talk about them. And it's worth noting that I don't really research most of the stuff. I don't try and be factual. There are facts to back up a lot of what I say, at least I think there are, but I'm open to being criticized or challenged on anything I do state as an opinion or a fact. I'll fight for my opinions, but obviously facts are facts. So if you find facts to disprove mine, I might have my own response, or I might admit that I was wrong. Now, moving on. There was something that I was watching I think it was about a week and a half ago. It was about Lindsay Shepherd. Now, if you've never heard of Lindsay Shepherd, I'll just very brief. She was a teaching assistant who worked at Laurier University in Canada, and she showed a video of Jordan Peterson on a show. I forget the name of, but basically it was a widely watched, popular TV show, and so they hosted Jordan Peterson, and so that was something the whole country would have watched. Nothing controversial, but basically she got in a lot of trouble. I say a lot of trouble. She got taken into like a trial of sorts and spoken to by Rambukana and a few other people I forget the name of. And essentially she recorded the whole thing and she released that. And yeah, there was a whole bunch of it was absolutely shocking, some of the stuff they said, and they got in trouble, and it all basically became unfounded. And Lindsay Shepherd suffered a lot from the whole backlash to her posting about this whole thing. Now she is suing the university for basically just the damages she suffered to her reputation, to her potential career prospects, all that kind of thing. And this university is actually, well, I don't know about the university, but some of the people involved that she is suing are counter-suing back. And if I'm being honest, I admire Jordan Peterson a lot and Lindsay Shepherd. They're on the right side, in my opinion. But I don't think that they really do have grounds for a suit. Because the countersuit is actually quite correct. They did not have any grounds that Lindsay Shepherd recorded the whole thing and she released it. The teachers didn't cause her to suffer. Of course, she would have probably suffered if she'd been kicked out for those reasons. Then, yeah, she'd have some grounds, but she would have no proof then. So it's a bit of a difficult thing. I would have maybe not released the recording publicly if I was going to try and sue. But quite aptly, they don't actually have many grounds to sue the university or the people involved, because obviously, because she published the video, or because she published the recording, she is responsible for everyone lashing out. She's also responsible for a lot of the support she's got, so that's great. I wouldn't be able to hear that whole thing if it weren't for her. In the same sense, Jordan Peterson, he's also suing. He's also filed a suit, and I don't feel like he should. I admire Jordan Peterson, but really, he's not really. I don't think he's got any reason to sue. I mean, yes, they said he was like compared it to Hitler, and they said all sorts of false allegations about him. But again, Lindsay Shepherd is the one who released that recording. They weren't saying it. They were saying privately. They weren't saying it to the public, and so they weren't really slandering him because it was kind of private. But I'm not sure what the grounds of that or where the lines are drawn. I'm not really a legal expert, but I don't think that there are many grounds for that for the suit, because it's just not. They would have had to release it. In my opinion, you have to be the one who published it. The person who published it is responsible. They've made it public. Obviously, there are exceptions, like if you're a whistleblower, that doesn't count. Now there was this other little story I heard about, and I didn't pick it up too much, but it was a very interesting one. So basically, there's a story about the Sandwell Council. Now, this is very alarming, this one. And basically, there's a member from the Sandwell Council, and they basically asked the police. I say asked. They called for the police to arrest a blogger. And yes, there's this blogger he writes these posts, and he kind of very harsh and critical towards some of the members of the Sandwell Council. And the council leader, he basically said, he said, I want you to, he said to the police that he wants the man arrested. Now, of course, I forget the facts. I've not been following the story. I think there's some updates to that story. But just on that basis, whether or not it's legal or not, what kind of council leader, what kind of representative are you if you cannot stand up to criticism? We're talking about your constituents, the members of your country, and sometimes, if they're over the seas, then fair enough, but ultimately, you are a representative of your constituency or of your country, and you are putting yourself in a public position. Now, I've considered putting my name out there for public elections of sorts. I thought about it, and I thought, well, I know that if I put my name out there, I'm literally exposing myself out to the world. Should I really be shocked if I don't get some sort of criticisms or responses, especially if I start saying things? Now, if this guy was criticizing the council, I'm sure he had his reasons for doing so, but he certainly does not deserve to be arrested for it. And as a council member, all council members, all MPs shouldn't expect to not be criticized. I've seen many MPs, this whole thing with Anna Soubry and with Jess Phillips, where, yes, they've been treated very harshly, but they're calling for silencing people who use vile speech. And it's just, who the hell do you think you are? What kind of world do you want to live in, where you have no speech out against you? It is a pathetic stance for leaders to take. Doesn't matter if you're a leader of a small town or a leader of a country. You're a leader, and people should be looking up to you, and so you should be a leader who makes a good example. But hey, that's what we come to expect these days. Now, so this is another little brief thing I was thinking about just where we are globally. And you might say this is it could be a nihilistic point of view, it could be pessimistic, but it feels like we're in a dark place right now. We begin to see things change in our society. There's a big growth for over the last 3 decades or so. There's this big push for casual sex. There's a big push towards the transgenderism and many genders, and gender being a construct, and which is extremely contradictory. And even now we're seeing defense of pedophilia coming out. People saying, it's age is just a number. We've got people saying that they can't control it. It's they're born with it. The pedophilic tendencies, they're born with them, and so they can't control them. So you are a bad person for judging them morally for being a pedophile. And that's how it starts. But if you look historically, the Roman Empire crumbled over a long, long period of time. But it started with similar things. And it makes me wonder if maybe our civilization, the Western civilization currently, I'd say, in particular, if it's beginning to unravel, as people begin to be so relaxed with their lives, so laissez-faire, that they feel that they don't realize how much work, how important the values that the civilization has are for their survival, for our civilization to prosper. All these values of free speech and of liberty, how important they have been to keep the country free and successful and prosperous. And I think that, people basically start to take the things that brought us to where we are, they start taking them for granted and challenging them and changing them. And it's like when you're sitting on the branch of a tree and you saw the side close to the trunk. That's basically what they're doing. They're eroding the stuff that is holding them in place where they are. And then they act surprised and shocked when it comes back to bite them. It's absolutely horrible. But I do wonder about the future of a civilization, if this is just the way people always think about it, because there's always that stance that everyone in every single generation era thinks this is the worst times we are, and this is the worst time, this is like the end times, it's horrible. We've heard that time and time again. And it makes me wonder, is it that? Or are we genuinely seeing a shift that hasn't been seen for centuries? It's just worth a think. Now, another little thing I saw, or I see people talk about a lot, is, talking about Brexit, and they're talking about, it's been 2 years, why are we not planning anything? Why are we still trying to talk about it? Even Remainers are saying, come on, let's just leave now. And if I was going to ascribe a reason for it dragging on for so long, I would look to various piracy acts that have been attempted to be enacted over the past decade or so. So one such was SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act, and another was ACTA, the I actually can't remember this one. Let me Google it quickly. So ACTA was, I know it was the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement. There you go. And there were multiple others. I think there was PPI or BPI or something like that. And many that happened before I got heavily invested in the anti-piracy laws that people try to enact. Now, the problem with these laws, obviously, is that they don't understand the differences between the market, society, and law. The law tries to outweigh the market and society. There's a whole book on this called Free Culture by Lawrence Lessig. It's definitely worth a read. It's an amazing book. I really love it. And it really just explains why this whole push against torrenting and piracy and such are not really logical. And how the market doesn't really react to it well enough. So looking... Anyway, what I'm saying is, if you look at those acts, right, they tried SOPA, it got blocked. They tried PPI, it got blocked. They tried ACTA, it got blocked. And it got blocked by the people. Massive outrage. But every single time, even I remember this myself, I'd hear about another one, another attempt. And I'd think, it's just going to get blocked again. That'd be the one thought. Or the other thought would be, what's the point now? They've tried it so many times. Why am I still trying to block it? And I believe that one of the reasons they're trying to drag Brexit on for so long is because they are waiting for people to just get so tired they give up. They go back to their lives because everyone's got lives to live. They got their own lives, they've got their own jobs, they've got their own family, they've got friends, they've got everything going on around them. Everyone's got their own stuff to sort out. And there's only a few people who have the time and energy and resources to be able to focus on Brexit. Or maybe they're passionate enough that they can. I've got a lot going on, but I've been trying to stay engaged in what's going on with Brexit, what's going on with politics. But I can see how by just trying to just tire people out, exhaust them, it can work. It has worked before. The funny thing is, Theresa May was one of the people bringing in one of these acts for... she was trying to allow the government to snoop on all our emails and text messages. The Snoopers Charter, I believe it was dubbed. And she actually managed to pass one into law. So, I'm no fan of Theresa May just for that. And that was before she was even Prime Minister. Which actually brings me to the whole thing on her background. If you look at Theresa May's background, this is another thing I was thinking about. And just thinking, a lot of people... I remember Sargon was saying, when Theresa May, when she was in the election and all that, she was just saying, we are going to make Brexit happen. We're going to leave. And he was saying that she was, no one really knew anything about her. And I just thought, watching that, I thought, well, no, I knew. And I'm sure many other people did know as well. We knew about the Snoopers Charter, her trying to basically allow the government to spy on private communications, which is absolutely horrendous. Not only that, but she was fully in support of David Miranda's detention after Edward Snowden and The Guardian leaked the NSA files and all the stuff that was going on around that. And David Miranda was one of the people working with The Guardian, and he got detained under the one of the terrorist acts, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. It's really ridiculous that the government thinks that that's a terrorist act. Same as this whole thing with Lawrence Southern and Brittany Pettibone and forget the guy's name actually, who they got detained and for under the Terrorism Act, and that was ridiculous because obviously they're not terrorists. Meanwhile, people who are of suspicious character, who actually call for hate and hate crimes, call for murders and killings, are allowed through without a problem, because that's how this world works. Just lovely. Now, there's one more little thing I'm just seeing. It was I've not watched it myself, but there's this whole debacle around Doctor Who. Everyone's talking about the new, it was Jodie Whittaker coming on board as the new Doctor. Now, I've not watched it. I'm not really on board with it, for a few reasons. But I was watching a video. This guy's just talking about how it's plummeting in the polls. It's doing horrible. The ratings are horrible. And I noticed something, and it made me chuckle. I just thought it's worth thinking about, especially for story's integrity. But there was this whole speech from oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. The last Doctor, the guy before Jodie Whittaker. I think he was the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. And Peter Capaldi had this whole speech in an episode where he was talking about how the Gallifreyans of the Time Lords, they are far beyond any petty things like race and gender and class, and how they're far more supreme than that. And it's a lot of moralizing arguments, but fair enough. He's an alien civilization, all that. Okay. But then they did this sort of they did this episode where they had the first Doctor, and they had that guy from I think he was in Harry Potter actually. David Bradley, I believe. Yeah, David Bradley. I'll check that out. Yes, David Bradley, and he was playing the first Doctor. He did a quite good job, but he was making these little snide jokes about cleaning up the Doctor, obviously cleaning up the TARDIS. Sorry, and obviously you need a woman to do it and all that, and doing all these sexist jokes. Now, the first Doctor is the same person as the 12th Doctor and the 13th Doctor. Now, he's always been a Time Lord. He's always been a part of the civilization that is far beyond gender, race, and class. So why the hell would he be saying things about women cleaning and all that kind of thing? Now, obviously, the funny thing is, that was just an attempt on the I would say that was an attempt on the writers of the 12th Doctor Who season or all that, just trying to signal towards the old times of Britain, of BBC, of like the I don't even know what year the first Doctor was around. I think it was the 50s, 60s? Probably no, not the 50s. That's ridiculous. It's probably even later than that. Oh yeah, okay. So 1960s, 1970s, and they're trying to hail to that, saying, "Oh, look how much more superior we are now. We're so much more progressive. We've got all this equal gender, equal race, all that kind of stuff going on." So, yeah, obviously it is a major flaw in the writing integrity, because you're talking about the same character here. There's no difference between... there's obviously differences between the first Doctor and the 12th Doctor. But he's supposed to be, how old again? 900 years old or something? And obviously, I mean, I don't know how long he's actually lived for, because we've had there's those episodes which have spanned hundreds of years, like that one where he keeps dying over and over again. But it just doesn't make sense, because you got the story about this character who is beyond all that, but then the writers obviously cut that in, which completely it's weak story writing, because you want the characters to be able to say, you could do all sorts of comparisons between what the 12th Doctor has been through compared to the first Doctor, but they're both from the same civilization, so it completely changed the character to that degree. It's a bit ridiculous and honestly a bit pathetic. But that's what we've come to kind of expect from the BBC these days, and I'm not surprised, frankly, because it's tiresome, and I honestly look forward to a time where, I don't know, we don't have a publicly funded broadcasting company that is so biased. So either they're going to be unbiased, which is kind of impossible. Maybe you split it in two. You have two sides, or you just get rid of it. Who knows? But I'm not. I just thought that was a funny note about Doctor Who, because such an obvious virtue signal there about how progressive we all are now, apparently. Now, there's one last little thing I just want to talk about, and it's something I've started working on that I'm just want to share. I doubt anyone will join in on this, but I'm working on a project, and if anyone is interested or knows anything about web development, I would be happy to have some help. Now, following the whole Brexit thing, I was listening to, I heard this whole thing by Anne Soubry and Jess Phillips, and now they're both elected MPs, at least as far as I know, they're both elected. And then I was thinking about other people, who are elected MPs. I'm trying to think of various names, but essentially I got to thinking, so obviously Anne Soubry is against Brexit. I don't know what Jess Phillips is, but I have to assume she's probably against Brexit as well. And I got to thinking, well, is the constituency she represents against Brexit? Because if they're not, if her constituency voted to leave, she has an obligation, at least in my opinion, she has an obligation to represent her constituency and their wishes, not her own wishes. And so what I've set out to do is to build an application which gathers all the information, all the elected MPs and their constituents, and uses statistics to tally up what the stance of the constituency is and what the stance of the MP is, and basically to create a map of data that tallies up which MPs represent their constituencies the most accurately or in the best way. I don't care if if you're a Scottish MP, you probably should be going pro-Remain, because most of Scotland voted Remain. However, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure almost all, if not all, the Welsh MPs are pro-Remain, when Wales is majority Leave. So there is not the correct amount of representation there. And I feel like there's more to be said about other places. I'd love to see the numbers at the end of all this. And I plan on doing other issues besides Brexit. Brexit's the main one I'm focusing on, but I plan on maybe expanding it onto other things. I'll have to figure out which ones, but things like, the UN Migration Pact, and I'm trying to think what else there would be. But basically anything where I can get the problem is I need proper statistics, and it's a lot more difficult to do that where it's not an election. The referendum had proper statistics. You can get the tally of each constituency. You can't really do that with something, say, like people's opinions on May's deal, because that's all polling. And it's kind of inaccurate, the polls, because they're always based on the audience of each person who tries to run a poll. Anyway, so that's something I'm going to be working on. I'll be talking about it a bit more in the future, any updates on that project. But those are some of the things I'm working on. I've been thinking about, now, next time I want to be talking a bit about Russia's interests in Africa, and because that's something I want to talk about, but I want to make sure I at least read a little bit on it before I actually talk a bit more on that. But who knows what I'll be talking about. I've got a lot more to think about. A few more things I was thinking about, but I'm going to close up there. Again, if you have any problems with any of the stuff I've said, anything you think, hey, that's wrong, that's not true, please comment about it. If you have any sources, please share them. I actually enjoy reading sources from different places. Until next time, that's all from me.